Woo. End of the day, I've got the best panel right here. Like I said, it's the best panel when you know that nobody on here even needs an introduction. You can see them up there, but as far as planting the beginnings of this entire ordinal space that all of us have joined, and either because we're smart and we're early, or because maybe we had too much head trauma as kids, we're fucking here and we're early. And these 5 guys right here laid the foundation for what we're building on top of now and for the next 1,000 years. So let's fucking go. All right, I'm not a sitter, I'm a stander, but I am so excited to host this panel. So let's just jump into it. Experimental recursion. All these guys from Bunzy with music to Trevor with Pizza Pets and Pizza Ninja Game, like just absolutely incredible. Snoop with Ordinals and Danny with fucking 3JS. I mean, legends up here, all you guys. And Shaf with Oviedo and putting massive files on Ordinals. Like, this is the foundation. So let's start with you, Trevor. Everyone got microphones? Good.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Trevor, let's start with you. Like, you have Pizza Ninjas. You've got an awesome community. You built Pizza Pets. It was the first of its kind in this space. You know, we can tie it to recursion. We can just tie it to planting the seeds that people can build on forever. Like, what is this space, and what did that experience mean for you?
Yeah, I think that there's so much more we can do with Ordinals that we haven't even really tried that much to do. And you know, it's the great thing about Ordinals is that it's so simple to use. It's very easy to go to any website. You know, there's Oviedo being one of them, and many others. Ordinals bought others. You can go and you can just upload any file and put it on Bitcoin and just pay a fee. And there's no smart contract. There's no complexity. It's just sublimely simple. And the thing is that it's not just so easy, but there's also a lot of depth if you actually go into the features of recursion, if you go into rare sats, if you go into you know, all the different other things that people try to do, 4meggers, you know, like there's a whole, like, once you actually dive deep, when you get dipped in the deep fryer of Ordinals, like there's no going back. And I think there's still so much opportunities and things that we can do, such as on-chain gaming, which with Pizza Pets was really challenging, by the way. And even just, you know, being able to have, for us, one of the challenges was like the indexing of like the dead or alive pets and being able to do that very quickly. In fact, it's actually a bit easier to do on Bitcoin because of how slow the block times are. So if you have like an on-chain game where there's, you know, you're not like a first-person shooter where you're making a transaction for every shot, but you're like a strategy game or like a Pizza Pet style game, Bitcoin actually becomes a really great platform to do that, even though the fees are high and whatnot. But I think that like the surface area between parent-child recursion, parent-child recursion, and all the other endpoints that have been developed, there's really a massive playground of features people to tap into, whether it's to make games or to make really innovative art. And the fact that the images and all the content will be on chain forever. If you make a game, it's going to run on forever on Bitcoin. I think is just something that there's no other place you can do that Ordinals. And so that's what's I'm super excited about. And I hope that we have many people that are here in the audience. You have a creative idea today, you go home and try some cool shit, and then let's see how it goes.
Well said, well said. So Danny, I want to go to you. You obviously, as much as anybody in this room, in this whole space, helped lay the whole foundation for this space, and you're such a great thought leader here. So you've allowed so many collections to thrive building on top of what you've put on chain. Where do you go from here? How do you keep innovating and keeping it fresh for yourself?
Yeah, so one of the beauties of recursion, or just the way that Ordinals is structured with on-chain, is that everyone can use what's already on-chain, right? And so like the whole idea is actually, I think composability is actually a better term for this kind of this code aspect of it. Although, it's basically you can use existing inscriptions to make your new work, and we've seen that with people here, and so that. So you also mentioned that's early days, right? And it really is early days. People are just starting to kind of understand. Well, okay, this is what you can do with Ordinals. Like this is what recursion is, and you can do like with Pizza Pets. with these new experimental art. This is for on the creator side of figuring it out, but also on the collector side and on the user side, they're just starting to realize actually this is all on chain on Bitcoin, and it's like this idea that this idea that you can own something and that it's also on chain is not, and actually we're talking recursion. There's also this idea of, well, is it even on chain? Like, Trevor mentioned indexing was difficult, but the indexing is all within stuff that's on chain as part of the Ordinals protocol, right? So that's also another, like, everyone's trying to get their heads around this still, even us here, in this audience. So that's why I think recursion is actually a great topic, because we had to dive in and understand this.
Yeah, well said, Snoop. So you were just crazy enough to put an operating system on Bitcoin. Like, good thinking. Like if there's a glitch in the code, I always ask it this, and you're trying to explain it to me, I never get it. So you put an operating system on there. Obviously, you have to make changes and upgrades. What was the biggest challenge, and like what was the craziest part about putting a whole OS on chain?
There was a lot of complexity needed to put Ordinals on chain. It's only about 8 megabytes, so it's a relatively small operating system, but the reality is it is a full OS that'll run natively in whatever browser you load it in that is entirely inscribed on chain. Getting WASM files working nicely was tricky, so that we could start having WebAssembly applications effectively. So we inscribed a bunch of emulators and applications like Photoshop and programs that are sort of a little bit larger that would fit onto a traditional single sat. And this is where the beauty of recursion comes in, because the OS needs to be updated. And so we simply point the modules, these individual sats, so to speak, recursively tied together, to always look for the latest inscribed child. And so we can effectively keep adding to this operating system, add more applications, more use cases. As the space evolves, we can start highlighting content that we want to be highlighted. So we saw that, there's amazing content on Bitcoin, but the friction to get access to that content is pretty apparent. You need to run a node, or you have to visit it through a marketplace. And that's really the only two ways you can properly see the content on Bitcoin. And even so, those websites aren't necessarily best suited to be able to display some of the really cool stuff that you can do with 3JS and P5 and all this stuff. So we wanted to build something that was more akin to a native user experience, with a user interface that was more reminiscent of something that people already are familiar with. Remove the friction and remove the scary aspect of what Bitcoin is, and allow people to see Ordinals the way they were meant to be seen. And so that was really why we wanted to put this on chain. It's a vastly complex Ordinal, I'm not going to lie, but it's very cool. I definitely urge anyone to check it out. It's all fully on chain.
Nice, Bunzy. I see you nodding a lot over there. So music on chain, like, we got Violetta out there, like so many people doing some really cool stuff, but music on chain is hard. It's big data. We're not doing pictures. We're not compressing them down on SVGs as small as we can. So what were the challenges with beat blocks and like, how did you pull that off?
Yeah, I mean, inspiration from everyone here on stage. I mean, the P5 library, beat blocks is effectively a similar moment, like where any artist can now point to a protocol and stitch together, pretty high quality or big files. And one thing that we also did was use a new MIME type called Opus, which is a very clean codex to kind of stitch all of this together. And why I compare it to the P5 library is because it's available for anyone to use. And I was nodding because Snoop was mentioning something about the latest child. So we can always keep this protocol up to date. In any libraries, we've inscribed over 25 megabytes of data to make this possible. And people talk about Bitcoin as a currency, and I think it's a store of value. And with art and culture being stored on Bitcoin and music being out of that conversation just didn't sit well with me. I was like, we're these PFPs, we think they're good art. Once the price goes down, like, is it? And music has moved generations and has done so much, and it's not being represented or stored. That's what just kept working on it. And yeah, we arrived at a super cool place. We actually today inscribed an inscription that every time you press play, it will pull stems and pick an arrangement that's completely different than the prior. What that takes is you record 5 different intros, 3 different choruses, all these things, and now you have this dynamic music experience. And we backed up into that. That wasn't our goal, but now we backed up into it because of the restrictions of Bitcoin. Now you don't have a fixed song. Imagine on Spotify, you press play on your favorite song, Then underneath it, there's a dynamic version, and you get a different whole representation of the song, the way the artist had these different ideas. And now you can hear that. You still get the same vibe. If you're ADHD like me, you like to play the same song over and over and over, you can still do that, but you get these new experiences. So yeah, it was very difficult, but music is a huge part of art, and we worked really hard on it. And through all the inspiration of what everyone else was doing, we made it happen.
Exactly. So Shaf, you've done so many cool things to make inscribing easier for people. What are you most excited about right now moving forward?
I'm actually most excited about how early we are. Like
We're so early, everybody. Have you heard that before?
Early.
We're so early. Are we early?
We are so early. There's like what, a couple hundred people here. I think that
Thousands.
this space is, especially with recursions where we are going, I see that right now we are focusing on art, and of course music and other use cases are coming. I think it's gonna become a lot bigger, and there's gonna be millions of people coming in here. So I'm excited for building tools that remove friction. So that's basically what I've been doing since the beginning, be it the large as fuck recursion files. Like we have a 27 megabyte ordinal that we've inscribed, and it costs us what, $800?
Not big enough.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of these experiments, and the large file is just, the image is one thing. There is like other use cases that we've been playing around with. What if there's a video? What if it's like a full song? And some of the other thing that I'm also excited about is we've been working on, as an artist, you're able to launch a recursive collection without any upfront cost. Something like progressive recursions. The collector actually ends up inscribing. So again, going back to, I'm just excited how early we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to do a huge special shout out right now. Actually, two. One for someone who is anon in this space, who deserves absolutely to be here. When I think of these 5 legends, the 6th one I think of, there's a lot of you out there, but I think of LIFO FIFO. So big salute to LIFO and the amount of iteration that guy does for this space. The guy's an absolute legend. The second shout out I'd like to make is to Scotch Fox and to the Vivid Group. They're doing a Scotch tasting in 2 nights. The reason I brought the Bagpiper out here was for tradition. These guys are laying the foundations of the tradition of what people are going to build on, whether it's music or whether it's games or whether it's art, generative art, operating systems. These guys and all of you out there building the foundation for what it's going to be. So Scotch, thank you for that whiskey. That was 120 proof Scotch. That was the real stuff. And I'm not a heavy drinker. Even the Bagpiper was like, damn. So thank you guys. You guys are awesome. So Trevor, as we get into kind of a little deeper, like what are you, obviously, you know, Casey, Raff, and the whole gang, or they keep iterating, they keep adding sats endpoints. Like, you know, you had a successful Pizza Pets game. You got a great, group with the Pizza Pets, Pizza Ninjas. Sorry, what are you most excited about? Like Danny said, we're in like the first inning of innovation. Like, where do you see your curiosity taking you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really exciting is that we're kind of living through a very interesting moment with Bitcoin itself, like seeing, for example, like the U.S. Strategic Reserve, or like literally the President of the United States last year campaigning here at this like very conference, but in Nashville. I think it's pretty incredible time to be alive to see how Bitcoin is starting to go mainstream. And what that means in my mind is that actually the projects building on top of Bitcoin, whether it be art or Rune's projects or others, I think stand a natural advantage, because Bitcoin is going to be the onboarding mechanism for so many people. And it's also going to probably at some point become the savings account for so many people that there's going to be a bias towards staying within that network. And so I think the people that are building here today are positioning themselves for a big advantage, whether that is that you're doing art, or whether you're doing music, or whether you're doing IP. Building on Bitcoin is like building on, it's like being at ground zero, essentially, of where we're going to see this technology, in Bitcoin specifically, have that mainstream moment. So that's what I'm excited about.
Nice. Jeff, what do you got cooking? I know you've got a bunch of stuff. You and I talked before, and you were excited to share. So what gets you most excited right now?
I think what's most exciting for me right now is certain things that we're working on, removing frictions, how many millions of people that we can onboard to this space. So the very first thing that is a bit of a blocker for people, new people coming in is, okay, what is this thing called? The password and seed phrase. It is a blocker. So how do we actually even try and do something with that, right? So we've been doing some experiments, and in the coming days, we're going to be releasing some things where we abstract a lot of these, but using it securely with technologies like passkeys. So I'm extremely excited how many millions of people, maybe in about 1.5 years' time, would say, oh yeah, I got into Bitcoin with Oviato. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, so Bunzy, you've laid the groundwork for music and people being able to build on top of that. So I know you've got some cool stuff with specific artists and people. I know you touched on it before, but like where do we build from there? Or is that really up to artists and musicians to, reuse your beats in an infinite amount of ways?
Yeah, I mean, what's inspiring me is just the fact of once something's on chain, it's there forever. Immutability is a radical thing. Like where a GitHub can go down tomorrow, your site can just vanish. We're used to a World Wide Web that we think is open and it's not. But when you put something on chain, and I'm a big advocate of open source, you can't not open source it. Your whole code, everything's there for everyone to use. And that's good for mankind and technology at large to move forward, rather than people rebuilding in these closed gardens and holding their IP or holding these ideas. It's like, I can do that and make it better. And it's a very powerful thing. And it's really eye-opening because through Recursion, we have a whole web now, like what Snoop's working on, and it will be there forever. And what's super cool about that is we talk about like the Thor network and we talk about some of these other things that are unregulated. This can happen on Bitcoin, and we're moving towards there. And once you put something on, like a package like the P5 library, we're putting raw JavaScript and really strong components into this network where we can continue to build. And creativity doesn't come from, hey, do whatever you want. It comes from restrictions. It comes from like, hey, you have to make this work with this amount of space, and then crazy shit happens. And where we're going with Ordinals, the term we're early, like I'll be the first to say that shitty and like, but it's true. Like it's in this situation, it's like we're putting P5 like, and we're putting music, and that's cool. We can do so much more. And now with like AI being able to scrape all this stuff and getting builders into the ecosystem easier, like we're going to see a lot of cool stuff in this next year.
I just always think like with Luke Dash Jr., like one man's treasure is another man's fucking spam. Like it's just, it's so ridiculous. Like this, to me, this is almost the archives.
It is. For
the next 1,000 or 10,000 years, as long as there's nodes running anywhere. So Snoop, if someone can iterate fast, it is, it's certainly Life of FIFO and Danny and all you guys, but Snooptoshi is right up there. So like where your mind, you probably have 15 thoughts going on at the same time, like solving problems. Where the fuck is your brain going next, dude?
I mean, I think with Ordinals, it's always the search for the killer app. I've spoken about it a few times, but I feel people have known about Bitcoin for a long time, and they either believe in it to store a value or they don't. But what we saw with ETH NFTs back in 2021 was something attractive enough to bring the normie no-coiners on board to actually get ETH for the first time to collect something they wanted to collect. And that's powerful. That's an interesting model. Now, I think what we've seen with the beginning of ordinal theory is great, but we're seeing a lot of copy pasta from other chains. What you can do with a SAT far outpaces anything you can do with any other medium we've seen on chain so far. So what we need is more innovation, is more experimentation, is finding this killer app, this thing that's going to make people think, fuck it, if I don't believe in Bitcoin as a store of value, I still want to collect one of those things. And if I need to get sats to do it, then so be it.
So is that what's going to finally bring people over? I know like we're early, like Bunzy said, we're so sick of hearing it. Everybody, obviously if you're sitting in here, we get it, but what brings them over? Is it the killer app where it's so seamless, like an Odin fund where it's completely behind the scenes and you don't care what the types look like?
The example I give is like what COD player knows what multiplayer infrastructure they use to connect Xbox, PlayStation, and PC users together? No one fucking knows, but they all enjoy playing the game. So yeah, I do agree. Sort of chain abstraction is a big part of it. Making the process for user onboarding is easier. But if you have something cool enough, people will overcome that friction to get involved, as we saw that again in previous chains and previous cycles. So I do think it's this experimentation. It's being able to add more complex data on chain, make it available to more creators. It becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And you have this ever-evolving complexity of ordinals that you can do so much with the SAT endpoints that are constantly coming out and made available. We're barely even scratching the surface. And with Ordos, we try to show that you can do a lot with code on SATs. And now what we need is more people experimenting to say, right, you know, what else can you do with the SAT? How else can it be used outside of the norm of what we all know and use it today? And this is why I want to shout out Beatblocks. Beatblocks is such a phenomenal piece of technology because music has really struggled to find its home on chain for every other chain until Bitcoin. And only now with Beatblocks have I seen a use case that actually improves the current, not just accepts it, but actually gives a better outcome of what you could ever do before. And that's something that is really, really impressive, in my opinion. So I'm very excited about Beatblocks. I'm very excited about innovation on chain that are ordinals that do things that we haven't seen before.
Do you think that innovation, let's roll to Danny, you know, like you laid the early foundation with these guys. How do we bring them in, or do we care if they come right away? Like we know, and it's just like a happy virus that eventually infects people and more come, and then more and more come. Is it just a natural organic growth and we all wait 20, 30 years for it to come to fruition?
I think none of us want to wait 30 years, right? We want it actually tomorrow.
I don't know if I have 30 years, dude.
No, I think it's actually really about removing friction. So there's just a lot of friction. Even today, like if you want to own Bitcoin, there's a lot of friction. Coinbase made it easier, but if you want to self-custody, there's all this wallet friction and seed phrase and all that. And even with Coinbase, you have to do a lot of work to get on Coinbase. And then when you're on Coinbase, you get all this spam from people who are trying to trick you into, you know, basically losing your money off of Coinbase, right? Because of, you know, the kind of, it's just very confusing for new people. But there are things that every year there's new things that kind of onboard people. Like, you know, Ordinals onboard a lot of people to Bitcoin from the crypto world, from the ETH world, basically. I think this year is really about publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies. Like that's going to onboard a lot of people into Bitcoin. And you can benefit from Bitcoin store value. You don't need to have self-custody to benefit from Bitcoin store value. Right? People need to just feel like they're getting value, they're getting store value from some sort of Bitcoin asset. And that could be MicroStrategy, right? And that we'll see a lot of people who are going to enter Bitcoin, you know, that way in this year and next year through, you know, public, like there be different vehicles to have Bitcoin exposure to actually appreciate, you know, Bitcoin as a store of value. And then you kind of explore these other things like Ordinals and RM Bitcoin. Maybe they'll dive into L2s and DeFi. But actually, I see of like, for example, this like the Bitcoin conference, the main conference going on now. Nakamoto is the big company they're going to push, and it's kind of it's both a Bitcoin treasury play that's about store value of Bitcoin, but also there's a degen aspect to it, right? They want to actually get basically, you know, retail to really like have fun with it, right? To sell it, buy and sell it. It'll be very volatile. It'll go up a lot. It'll drop a lot. Go up again, right? That also is kind of fun. We like Ordinals because Ordinals is fun, right? And Runes too. Runes is actually kind of, you know, more the fungible aspect of like really trading and having fun. So different ways to bring people on board and have fun, and also reduce the friction of that onboarding. You know, so you know. Yeah,
that's a good point. I think with what a great job, you know, Aaron and that whole group and Arthur and Gamma have done to bring this in, not only here but also bring it into the greater B25. I know Snoop, you were there today. I got to walk it yesterday. Like the amount of art, both physical Bitcoin art and ordinals, like that space is growing. Like I don't know what it was last year, but it was a good eighth of the whole place, or maybe a tenth. Like, but it's growing and growing. And I think the more exposure there, certainly going to get the people who think it's spam, but you're also going to get the people who are like, I want to buy that physical. Oh, it has this ordinal component. Now, how do I do that? You know, like onboarding.
Well, it's funny you say that. So I was at the Bitcoin Shroom booth earlier on today at the main BTC conference, and I was expecting a bunch of maxis to come and complain. Not a single one. Not a single one.
So you didn't get any FUD at the Shroom
Not
booth.
even one. Now, it was just the industry-only day, so I suspect tomorrow the maxis will come flowing through. But nonetheless, I was surprised how many people were receptive to the idea, wanted to find out more. How many of them just wanted merch? I don't know, but there is some phenomenal merch there. Yeah, so I mean, it was interesting to see the response from the people who were at least the industry people that were there today. So I think tomorrow will be a lot more telling, but I was surprised.
I think few Bitcoin maxis are against Ordinals. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
it's just a few of them are very loud about it, but in general, people like Bitcoiners kind of appreciate the use of Bitcoin, right? And Ordinals is a use case for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think one interesting part you said, like, what's the killer app, right? Like, Bitcoin already is the killer app. I think it's going to be lack thereof of when we start to realize like true censorship on the internet, and when people start to truly understand what it means to have sovereignty over not only your assets, your currency, but your artwork and things like this. Like, we count on the dollar just shitting the bed for Bitcoin to rise up. For art and these different libraries and all this stuff, the same thing's going to happen, but in a different way. They're going to try to control all of these things, what you see, what you can do, what you can put out into the world. And now through Bitcoin, that's when I think it really shines. And that's why I think these experimentations are super amazing to onboard people and get more of these artists expressing themselves, because these people are starting to get suppressed and we're not really seeing it yet, but it's only a matter of time. And I think indirectly, that's the killer app.
Yeah, and that dichotomy between, like, I feel like the more I go to barbecues in my neighborhood to when I get to hang out with you guys and everybody in here, that the split of what is known to unknown is getting so much wider. But at some point, it sounds like you're saying that dam's going to break. And when it does, like, not everyone's going to come on board. Not everyone collects Pokemon cards and baseball cards and Pogs, but some will. And bigger collectors are going to come, and this space is going to get bigger. So what a great group out here. You guys are legends. Thank you so much for sharing this stuff. Thank these guys. I mean, like, this is the beginning. So everybody out there, like, keep building, keep connecting with each other, and let's keep this space, like, true and honest. There's grifters everywhere, but I think Bitcoin and Ordinals is, like, one of the best places to just connect with people. So thank you, everybody, and take care.